So this isn't a video that we planned. This is something that's actually evolving this morning as we're going along. And I had an epiphany as I'm driving back here to the lot. You know, all right. Here's what happened. Last night we bought this 1990 Ram Charger. We got a really good deal on it. At some point it had chucked the spider gears in the rear, and previous owner stripped everything out from under the hood. They pulled the intake with the throttle body. They took every bit of computer-related hardware off of it, hacked up the harnesses, right? But I said to myself, you know what? This could be cool. This, you know, to do a late model restoration on a late model classic. These trucks are in demand. You know, not that I wanted to flip it or anything. I want to do this for myself. So, at any rate, this morning I said to myself, take a run out to pull apart and see what you could find out there to put this thing together. So I did. I jumped in a car, run out to pull apart. And out of like 60, 75 trucks that are there isn't a single 1980s, 1990 vintage truck. Evidently, as those are coming in, they're crushing them right away, and they're saving their lot space for like 1995 and newer. Bit of a problem. So here's the situation with something like this. As I'm driving back, I'm saying to myself, you know, even though it's late model, it's still not common anymore. Where do I find the parts for this thing? The ease of doing a late model restoration kind of like flies out the window. This is going to take as much effort and as much parts tracking to put this together the way it was supposed to be with the TBI system and all of that, as it would to build a 1970s or even a 1960s car. I've got to go hunt for this stuff. I've got to hit forums, I've got to hit swap meets, I've got to talk to people who've hoarded this stuff, right? It's not as simple as it seems. So I said to myself, all right, well, rather than have to go through all of that, I'll just put it together as a carbureted version. And then it dawned on me, right? I'm like, okay, I can do this with this truck because it's 1990 and it's OBD1. So here in the state of Tennessee, anything OBD1 or 1995 and older, 1994 and older, only has to pass a sniffer test to get inspected. OBD2, you get into the whole check engine light thing, everything has to be functioning. They don't even bother with the sniff test. They do everything off of the check engine light. Now, before we go any further, yes, I know there are lots of areas that don't have inspection laws. There are lots of areas where they have different inspection laws. But your major metropolitan areas all basically go by that same idea, that same system. OBD2 is the cutoff. So I can put this car together, this truck together, very simply with parts that I have laying around. And I know that I can get it to go through the sniffer test. That's not a problem. But what if this was 1995? What if this was OBD2? And let's say it's 10 years down the road now, and there's no chance of finding any of this stuff common in a junkyard or, you know, just tripping over it here or there. What do? How do you put a car like this together and have it legal inspected? That's where the cutoff is. I believe that that's your cutoff point. I think that once you cross the line into OBD2 territory, where the legality, the federal legality of the car is hinged on whether or not the check engine light is on, I think that's your cutoff. I think at that point it becomes unrealistic to expect to be able to keep a car intact 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road. Remember, we're talking about the collector car market. We're not talking about something you're going to hack together and go hot rod around with, take to the drag strip. We're not talking about something you're going to do engine swaps with. We're talking about the collector car market, where you want the thing to be as original as it can possibly be, and you want to cruise it, you want to take it to shows, you want to just, you know, be part of the club or the clique or the community of that particular vehicle. I think once you get to OBD2, and these things get older and older and older, I don't really see that possibility 10, 15, 20 years down the road. You don't build a classic car because you want to just run around with it, you know, or you don't get involved in the classic car market because you just want to run around with it for a season. You get involved with the classic car market because you love the vehicles and you want to have it for the rest of your life. So, you know, you dedicate this big section of your universe to the care and feeding and the maintaining of the vehicle. OBD2, I believe, is the cutoff. As these things hit their 20th birthday, 30th birthday, 40th birthday, and they're not in common use, the parts to keep them running, the right oxygen sensors, the right throttle position sensor, the baro sensor, the speed temperature sensor, the vehicle speed sensor, all of these different, and then you've got all of your transmission shift modules and relays and sensors. All of these things come off the shelf. And unlike the previous generation or the traditional generation of collector cars, like what I'm accustomed to, what the market generally considers to be a collector car, they're all completely analog. If, let's say, the horn relay stops working, I can open the horn relay up and I can either solder a connection, or I can clean the points, or do whatever and put it back together again. You can't do that with any of the newer cars. And then you get to cars that are built in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, where the computer end of things has become extremely sophisticated, and you're not dealing with 12-volt systems, or you're not dealing with, like, let's say something like this, where the 12-volt is knocked down to 5 volts so the computer can process it. With today's newer cars, you're talking about millivolts, and there are sensors and systems that tie everything together. And then on top of that, there's proprietary software. So let's say 10, 15 years down the road, there's an issue with your 2015, 2018 Dodge Challenger or Ford Mustang or Chevy Camaro, and you can buy the parts, you can piece it together, but what happens when the dealer no longer services through that proprietary software? What do you do with this thing? You've got a lawn ornament. So, I don't want to keep going with this. And like I said, we do have other videos planned on the future of the collector's market. The pricing trends, where things are going, and what is going to be, the car down the road. But as far as like the broad spectrum, I honestly do believe that as the market evolves over the next 5 or 10 years, that you're going to see that 1995 as the cutoff. There's going to be exceptions to every rule, there always is, but that switch from OBD1 to OBD2, I think that's going to be the dividing line. And what car do I think is going to be the most valuable car 10 years from now, one of the most sought after cars? Ready for this one? Monte Carlo SS. Why? Because it's the last of the cars that started the traditional V8 rear-wheel drive, full frame, carbureted, the 55 Chevy. The 87, 88 Monte Carlo is the last 55 Chevy, and I think that eventually the true collector's market is all going to be clustered between those 2 points, and that particular car is going to be the one that people are looking for. Anyway, see you tomorrow.